What do people most misunderstand about going no contact with a parent?
That's a very good question. I think what's most misunderstood is the level of severity of what might have happened to make a person go no contact. I think people usually project their own life circumstances onto other people, like whether they're aware of it or not. So I think a lot of times when people hear somebody say they don't talk to a parent, their immediate thought is, oh, well, my parent's not perfect either, but I could never cut them out. Or they think the reverse. Well, I have children. What if one day my child cut me out? Like I'm doing my best. So like I think people go like straight to this inner world of their own self and they don't really pause to reflect about what was this person's experience. Is this person a reasonable human being? Because I think usually also the projection I find is people assuming I must not be a reasonable human being if I had to cut out a parent. And they have no idea the journey I've walked, all that I did put up with for so many years. Like my
Mm.
level of tolerance, my bullshit level is like sky high, which is really awful. And I really wish it wasn't, but people don't understand that. It's not that like one little thing went wrong and I was like, I'm cutting you out. Like
Yeah.
it's like a, death by a thousand cuts. Like a million things had to happen before I could even find the strength to make that choice.
Have you ever seriously considered ending your relationship with a parent? If you think that sounds crazy, you wouldn't be alone, but you would be wrong. In the US, there's a growing trend of adult children choosing to go, quote, no contact with their parents, one or both, meaning that they sever all communication and all interaction, often permanently. The exact prevalence of going permanently no contact is really tough to quantify due to the reluctance to report it on surveys, as well as the difficulty of tracking the difference between permanent no contact and just temporary estrangement, which, by the way, is also on the rise. So, why would someone, in the absence of physical violence, ever choose to go no contact with their mom or their dad? Jinjara Mitchell is beginning to shed light on that with her recent film, The Ornament. The Ornament is winning accolades at various film festivals nationwide as we speak. A filmmaker, an actress, and a media personality, Jinjara has been no contact with her mother for almost 10 years now. The Ornament, the movie, is based on her experience at age 10 of completing a homework assignment where she was supposed to describe what her mom did with her and her siblings at Christmas. A well known author and motivational speaker at the time, Jinjara's mom was a totally different person at home when nobody was watching. The Ornament is an honest window into how far a child will go to protect the ego and the image of an abusive parent, how much she will endure for a glimmer of actual love, and what it takes to finally give yourself permission to walk away from a parent child relationship that, despite the white picket fence, turned your first 18 years into a real fight for survival. After you hear Jinjara's story, if you didn't before, you will see very clearly why a child might one day grow up to justifiably cut a parent entirely out of their life. And I think that sort of goes to why it is so brave to share your story. There's a lot of backlash, but since I've launched the podcast, I've spoken with a lot of people who
Yeah.
have become influencers. And what I've learned is you may be one thing where you realize you're comfortable in social media and it's crafted. But then you realize fairly quickly people want to know the real you because there's always a
Mhm.
story behind it. And then sharing it feels super brave because it's usually something very, very personal that made you the way you are, which is the reason why people gravitate towards your energy. And then there's backlash for sharing it. And,
Mhm.
many of my listeners obviously won't know your story, but some may have seen your movie, The Ornament, which has gotten a lot of accolades. So, congratulations on that
Thank you.
in various film festivals. But in a nutshell, it's a short film about a 9-year-old girl whose holiday homework assignment forces her to make a choice between protecting versus outing the truth about the way her mother is raising her.
Mhm.
Tell me, why did you choose that particular event of a holiday homework assignment to illustrate the manipulation that characterized your childhood?
Yeah, it's a very good question again. So I've spent the last probably 13 years like realizing that everything I thought I knew about my life and what is the truth are two really different worlds. Like it's almost like I feel like I left a cult in a sense, even though my mom, it wasn't a cult, but in a lot of ways it felt like one because I was really indoctrinated with a lot of a false world.
Hmm.
And I was reflecting on a lot of the moments of my childhood and things that happened. And one moment that stood out to me was that whenever I would make my mom gifts, like, you know, at school, you're a little kid, the teacher's like, let's make things for our mommies. It's Mother's Day or whatever it is. It's
Yeah, like a
Christmas.
craft
A
project,
craft,
popsicle
exactly.
sticks or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. So when I was younger, I wanted my mom's love more than anything, and I would make her these crafts a lot. And oftentimes they were crafts at school that I would make. And whenever I would make my mom a craft, like let's say in this case, like a Christmas ornament, she would give it away to people in front of me and tell me that I made it for them. Like she'd have people over. My mom was, you know, an aspiring motivational speaker, actually a quite successful one for a few years there, and a self-help author and all these things. And she would give away the crafts I'd make for her to people she was trying to impress. So if it was like an editor at the house or somebody who she wanted to really like her and think she had this perfect family, and she would say like, oh, my nickname growing up was Gingy made something for you. And I would sit there with like a stunned look on my face and be like, what is she talking about? I don't know this person. I've never made them anything in my life. And she would inevitably always pull out whatever the latest thing I made for her was, and she would give it to the person in front of me and say, Gingy made this for you. Isn't that right, Gingy? And she would like look me in the eyes with this look of like, you better agree with me or you'll have hell to pay. And so I'd sit there because I was a very well trained little girl, and I'd go, it's true. I made that for you. And, you know, in my heart, I'm breaking apart. Like it was just devastating. And
Do
so
you
that was,
remember ever saying to her, but mommy, I made that for you? Do you remember that?
I did say it once or twice. I'd be like, Mommy, I made that for you. And my mom was a very scary person. There was no arguing with her. We could both be looking at a blue sky, and if my mom decides this sky is purple with zebra print, like it's purple with zebra print. It doesn't matter that I could take a picture of the blue sky and show her a photo and be like, it's blue. I could have everyone agree with me it's blue. It doesn't matter. And so that was what inspired the ornament, was me reflecting on that memory and then building out like a short story around that event.
Let's go back to the beginning. I want to provide a little bit more context. When I see people who go through these types of things and they have the strength to not just hold it together, but like process it and walk through it and try to build a life that feels real for them without running away from it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really powerful. So I want to go back to the beginning. When you were born, your parents were together and your father passed away later.
Oh my
Can you give
gosh,
me
my
context?
life story, it's extremely complex. So
Oh,
I have a sister who actually my mom gave birth to when my mom was in high school. My mom gave her away. So Jackie was raised by another family, but
okay.
my dad was terminally ill. He was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis really late in life. Um, During his heart double lung transplant, that's when my mom went to go find her daughter. She had already given up for adoption. She showed up to my sister's school pretending she was an author, trying to see life through the eyes of a child, lied to everybody about her true identity. After 3 weeks, revealed to Jackie, I'm your birth mom. Don't tell your parents you met me. I live in California. My sister lived in like a small town in Weyburn, Saskatchewan, and basically like, kidnapped my sister, long story short.
Were you alive at the time? She had already had
I
you?
hadn't been born yet,
You
no.
hadn't been
But my
born yet.
dad was
Okay.
like in the hospital having a heart and lung transplant, where my mom also told my dad's family, told the nurses and doctors that his own family wasn't allowed to visit him or talk to him at all. So my dad was just all alone in a hospital. My dad's family had a lot of money. My mom was
Right.
essentially trying to get the money from my dad when he died, is what I've learned happened.
It sounds
And
like there
she
was
thought the more
something.
children she had, the more money she'd get, because she's called me her investment like multiple times throughout my childhood
So
and
then
my
she got
siblings.
pregnant while he was ill.
So she adopted my brother Ryan.
Hmm.
Basically, was going through an adoption process, not only trying to find my sister when my dad was in the hospital, but also going through finding a child to adopt. So they adopted my brother Ryan while my dad was going through an extreme surgery, which is not a good time to adopt children.
No.
Then my mom went and grabbed Jackie.
Hmm.
They'd already given birth to my brother Fred. And then I was born a year post transplant, so a year after my dad's surgery.
Oh,
So
post surgery.
yeah, so the diagnosis happens, a marriage happens post diagnosis.
Okay.
My dad's family owned a huge meatpacking company in Canada. They're like to my dad, Fred, it's not a good time to get married. My mom was 14 years younger than my dad, high school dropout, but a beauty queen, very
Mhm.
gorgeous. My dad's family kind of has alarm bells ringing. This doesn't seem like a good time to get married. My dad tried to, I think, end it with my mom. My mom got very upset. My dad's family was like, if you're going to get married, like, here's a prenup. My mom said, you don't love me if you're making me sign a prenup. I'm walking. My dad begs for her back. He's sick and dying. He wants companionship, I imagine.
Yeah.
And then a whole flood of crazy things unfold.
So a couple years later, he passed away. How old were you when he passed?
I was 6.
That's so
Yeah.
young.
Hmm.
There was some question about the truth of how he passed.
A lot of questions about how he passed. Yeah. As I mentioned, my mom was like a motivational speaker and an author.
Hmm.
And her story was my life started as a runaway pregnant teenager. I then became Miss Saskatoon. And then I met Fred, the most eligible bachelor in town. Again, this is my mom's story. So
Her
Fred
story.
had a
Yeah.
bankrupt company.
Hmm.
Luann meets him. He's terminally ill. She's a caregiver to a terminally ill husband. She's a single mother. Suddenly, my dad dies unexpectedly during a routine checkup. She's left with a bankrupt company and 3 children. So now she's a widower and a single mom. And, has spent her whole like last decade being a caretaker to my dad. So then, like, her whole thing was how she single handedly turned this company around into a multi-million dollar corporation, and how nobody believed she could do it because she was a woman and a blonde piece of fluff who knew nothing about business. But look at me, I can do this, and anything I can do, you can do too, and better. And like, it was this whole female empowerment motivational thing that people fully bought into. My mom was endorsed by the editor of Forbes. She sat on the Harvard Women's Leadership Board.
It's
It
a
was
powerful
like
story.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And nobody knows what happens inside a company, right?
Well, and my mom
So
also said, whatever you tell the press, they'll print. So she essentially had like the devil's luck and just kind of took this circumstance and spun it into making her look like she was this very accomplished person. But the truth is, my dad's company was never bankrupt. Um, so again, I was raised to believe that he died during a routine checkup. And that was my
okay.
mom's story. That's what she'd say on the stage. That's what she wrote in her book. And as I got older, because I noticed my mom had a habit of lying a lot, I thought about my dad's death and I was thinking about that time in our lives. And it just didn't make sense. Like, my mom and my dad were gone for about a month before my dad died. They had left in the middle of the night. I didn't really get any answers about where they were gone. And so I remember when maybe I was a teenager, I said to my mom, how did dad die? Like, I really want to understand how he died. And her response was, read my book. Like, if you want the answer, read my book. So again, I was like, I don't want to read your book because I know what your book says. I want
Details.
like to have a conversation about this.
Yeah.
And yeah, over the years, I've met my dad's family who I was forbidden to meet. And they've helped fill in a couple of the blanks, but I've also like looked at my dad's medical records. So again, I'm kind of filling in the blanks as I go. And it's not a routine checkup. That's just not what happened.
Even died during a routine checkup. That's like
Exactly.
saying, how did you get pregnant? I went to Chicago and I get pregnant. Well, that, no. Did you go and sleep with someone in Chicago? Did you get IVF in Chicago? That's not an answer.
100%.
So, did your siblings want to ask as well and investigate, or were you the one who was pretty much pushing for a little bit of clarity?
So that's a really interesting question. What happens in a home like ours is like we as siblings never talked about any of it. Like it's not like we bonded and would be like when my mom would have her like eruptions, like we'd all just kind of be sitting there like looking at each other like can this end? We never talked about it. So once
Mm,
I started to have questions, I did start to talk to my siblings and they want to know, but I think I wanted to know the most. My sister helped a lot actually because she's 14 years older than me. So she
mhm,
remembers my dad, especially from that period of time where she went to live with them. She really helped champion me to be like, your dad was a really good guy.
mm.
And I saw the dynamic between him and our mother, and it wasn't great. My brothers, I think my one brother just wants to forget any of it happened. He just wants to leave it in the past. And my other brother, he's supportive of me searching, but he's just, I think, the same thing. I need to know what happened. It's really important to me.
I mean, I think I would want to also. I can't put myself in your shoes, but I'm divorced. My kids go back and forth, dad's house, mom's house. I have noticed what feels like a bifurcation in the way they react to me versus their dad. It's almost like with a mother, children seem to feel an intense loyalty that
Mm-hmm.
inspires an inability to question, even if I'm angry or even I have a if I have a temper about something, I go out of my way to then sit and apologize to my kids the next day and say, you know what? I yelled over that and I shouldn't have yelled over that. I do that because I see that children seem to have this innate loyalty with their mother. They don't
Mm-hmm.
want to upset her by questioning her. And it doesn't feel the same way with dads. It feels like they love their dad, but it's not that kind of loyalty. It feels like it's a deeper, visceral fear when it comes to your mother disapproving of you. So, what you're saying to me makes sense because if there's three kids at the table, and everybody knows that she's literally saying, to use your analogy, the sky is black and white checkers, and you
Mm-hmm.
guys know it's blue.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to help you if you
Yeah.
argue with her? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the dynamic of your childhood was you and your siblings with your mom in the house. Do you think anybody else in the community knew the tone and tenor of your household, or do you think it was really that well masked?
If I'm being honest, I think people knew. What I've noticed is a lot of people say it's not my place. I've also noticed that people give the benefit of the doubt. Oh, that seemed off, but I'm sure she's having a bad day. Or
Mm,
so I think even if people could
yeah.
tell things were going wrong, I think it's too uncomfortable for them to get involved. And yeah, I think those are the two factors for why I think people didn't do anything. I don't think it was that well hidden. Also, like I said, I did grow up in a wealthy environment and a big house. So there was like a lot of envy around my family. So there's
Yeah.
also like, oh, poor little rich girl, living in her big house with a scary mom.
And people are very careful about saying anything negative about a wealthy family
Yeah,
because they think the backlash will be worse. They also think those children are protected.
I think that all those things are true. Agreed. Yeah.
Gosh. So move forward in time. You're going into high school. In your household, was it okay at all to question your mother?
My brother Ryan questioned her the most,
Mm,
but it never worked out for him. And he often got like, you know, the shit end of the stick,
hmm.
so to speak. And, you asked like, how did you turn out seeming so level headed?
Okay. Yeah.
I remember witnessing my brother try to argue with my mom, and my thought was, why? There's no point. She's not going to see your side. She's not going to go, oh, you know what? Now that you said that, I recognize that I was totally wrong. Like you mentioned, like you as a mother, you're retrospective. You recognize when maybe you didn't do things the way that you should have. Maybe the punishment didn't match the crime. Maybe that wasn't how I wanted to behave in that moment, or I apologize. My
Yeah.
mom didn't have that capability, and I knew it.
Yeah.
So I just I just accepted, like I said, my like bullshit tolerance is just super high because I don't know if you've heard the analogy of like a frog in hot water. It's like if you
Yeah.
boil a frog slowly, it will just like boil alive in the hot water.
Yeah.
I feel like when you're boiled in the hot water, you just become okay in this insane environment.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, to answer your question about trying to argue with her, if any of us did, yeah, there were maybe like small attempts, but it never worked out. And for me, I just learned I'm going to let her say what she wants to say, do what she wants to do. I might not agree with it, but I'm going to make it look like I do just for survival.
To keep the peace.
Mhm.
So, two questions about that. What was the nature of punishment in your household? Was there any physical punishment or was it only emotional abuse?
It was both for sure. I mean, when my brother was younger, he had drawn with a jiffy marker on a teacher's dress when he was,
Hmm.
I think, in second grade, and his punishment was no food for a week. So he could only have water. And
Oh,
I remember the first meal he ate after that, he like had spaghetti, like a big bowl of spaghetti, and sorry, I'm getting emotional, but he vomited everywhere. But he was in trouble for that too.
for
Um,
vomiting. After
because he
being
hadn't
so
eaten.
hungry that he ate too fast, basically, in
But then
his
he was
stomach.
in trouble. It was like, that's disgusting. Why did you throw up? You know? And like I remember when we were younger too, like my brother would like harm himself because my mom would be like berating him. And I remember one time watching my brother Fred, like he was slamming his head on the dash of the car, like, and he was maybe 10 years old, just calling himself stupid. And my mom just kept yelling. She didn't stop. She wasn't like, oh, no, 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 don't hurt yourself. You know,
Don't
like it
say
was
that.
just a
Yeah, don't
mistake.
do that.
Nope. Just the yelling never ended. So yeah, there was, a lot of terrifying moments, and she was physical. I had been slapped across the face many times. There was spanking, which I guess is more normal, but yeah, no, it was not just verbal punishment.
Yeah,
It
but
was scary.
grounding
It
is
was a very
not.
scary house.
I heard something the other day, a therapist talking about the nature of trauma. And he basically said the trauma is not created by the event as much as it is created by the feeling that I was hurt. And when people could have helped me, they didn't. That's
Mhm.
the thing that creates the trauma, is that like nobody came for me. And so what really gets me in the example that you shared is that he's crying, spewing the untruths about himself that his mother has been saying, and she's making it worse. She's yelling at him. The
Mhm.
idea of yelling at a kid while they cry is, I think, one of the cruelest things on earth, you know?
Mhm.
And tell me what happened with each of your siblings once you guys grew up and got out of the house. Did you all just go through high school and then leave and kind of say sayonara, never see you again, kind of thing? Like not in terms of divorcing the family, but in terms of getting as much distance as possible.
So I was the last to make the cut on my mother. My oldest sister and my mom had a complicated relationship from the get-go.
Okay.
My oldest brother was the first to cut her out, and I remember being mad at him, like mortified and upset, and wishing he could just keep taking the pain for the sake of the peace. Like I remember thinking, how dare you do this to us? How dare you do this to me? Like I have to deal with it. Why can't you? Like that's how I felt at the time.
Yeah.
So I was very angry at him for cutting her out, and I was dealing with the pain and the rage my mom felt over the fact that he cut her out.
Which then
And
she's visiting upon you because you're
exactly,
still in her life. Mm-hmm.
because I'm still there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he cut her out pretty quickly. He also changed his name because he didn't want to have anything to do, like I said, with our past. So he changed his name. went to college, and I think after his first year of college, he actually met a girl. And I think she kind of peering into the life that we had was maybe one of the first people in his life to be like, something's not right here, something's not adding up. And I think that might have been the exact validation he needed. And I think it gave him the freedom to be able to separate. And I think it was hard for him because he loves us, like his siblings, but
Of course.
I know now it's exactly what he needed to do. And I'm, you know, all those hard feelings I had at the time are clearly gone.
Yeah.
And then next, it was actually me. I was with my boyfriend at the time, and he's now my husband, but he was my boyfriend. And I invited him in, and he saw some things happen that were just unlike anything he'd ever seen before. And I was 22 at this time, and it was clear that I was an adult now, and that like now I needed to take my life into my own hands, and that as a
Mm.
child, I didn't have a choice. But now I was putting people I loved in harm's way. Like I was now, not only was it the household being harmed, but it was anybody who now as an adult I invited in was also going to have to endure this
Like
type of.
you're bringing anybody who comes into your world into contact with her, and you
Exactly,
don't
and bringing
want
them
to
into
do
contact
that.
with, this crazy making and this insanity. So I wrote her a note, and I said, I love you so, so much, but I really need you to get help. And she also drank like a fish. Like she'd start her day with a coffee mug filled to the brim with wine. And basically, I think she was blackout most of the time, if I'm being honest. But I
Mm.
was like, I really need you to seek help for like drinking. At the time, I just assumed the alcohol was the full problem. I don't think that's the full
Mhm.
problem now. I think it's a huge part of it. And
Mm.
I left her a note, and me and my boyfriend at the time, we left in the middle of the night. We stayed at a Motel 6, and then we caught a flight the next day. And her response to that note was, not my circus, not my monkeys. Here's a list of things ain't nobody got time for that. Like she just sent an email full of memes, which sounds kind of funny now, but it wasn't funny at the time. She
It's
also said
really
something.
insulting.
Yeah, at the time, she also said something along the lines of like a clear conscience laughs at false accusations. So again, there was no like, oh my gosh, my daughter who has been, I was like at her hip all my life. There was no like, oh my gosh, like maybe I should self reflect. No, it was like now I'm the enemy, and it wasn't that I didn't want to have anything to do with her. I wanted to have something to do with her if she was willing to get help, if she was willing to seek any kind of change. If she could have tried to call me and have a conversation and be like, hey, I got that note. What did you mean? How can we repair this? But that's not what happened. And my brother Ryan was there too. So he woke up the next morning. I felt bad that we had left, but he woke up the next morning and was like, where did you guys go? I was like, we
Mm.
had to leave. And then he met us at the airport, and he also flew out. So that me and Ryan, my other brother, kind of all happened at once. But yeah.
Have you spoken since then?
To my mom.
What has been the contact? Yeah.
So it was a hard cut. It was the worst breakup of my life. And at that time I started reading a lot of self-help books. And
Hmm.
interestingly enough, I love Louise Hay, but one of the things she read I really misconstrued. And it was, when we're mad at somebody, we're mad at them for not being who we want them to be. And I think that that's true, but it gave me this like reason to just go back into my old pattern of allowing my mom to treat me the way she treats me, and just be okay with it, is how I read that. So then
I
I did
see
send
what,
my mom a
yeah.
message, and I said, hey mom, I realize like when we're mad at people, we're just mad at them for not being who we want them to be. And basically, like, I'm going to give you a free pass because you're going to be you. I didn't realize at this time that like just because somebody is the way they are, it doesn't mean you need to keep them in your life. So no apology came, no changes came. I just decided to dive back into the crazy world because
Mm.
I didn't want to just be mad at someone for not being who I wanted them to be. How selfish of me to want her to be how I want her to be when she's just going to be who she is. Again, couldn't recognize that she can be who she is. I don't need to be involved. But at the time, as a child, you want your mom in your life. So I did let her back in, And then I met my dad's family
Hmm.
by chance, actually, at a cafe. I had been raised to believe that my aunt had hired an assassin to kill my mom. Like, that's the story my mom told me.
That's a lot.
But again, because my mom lied a lot, I didn't really believe it. And I really wanted to know my dad's family because it felt like a huge missing piece of the puzzle of my life.
Yeah.
So when I met my dad's family, again by chance, uh, I learned a lot of things, and it kind of gave me the strength to feel like I didn't need to keep her in my life, and that was kind of when I decided to knock her out for good. So that happened. I met them at about 25.
Hmm.
Yeah,
How did you how did you go no contact with your mom?
I just sent her a text and said, "Hey, um, I've been trying to make this work. I've been trying to pretend that a lot of things that happened didn't happen just for the sake of this relationship, but I can't keep pretending anymore." And yeah, she didn't reply. Um, she's tried to reach out to me a couple of times since then, like on Mother's Day mostly, because again, it's about her. This Mother's Day, I'm reflecting on how I'm a mother and how you children don't talk to me. Um, but it's been maybe, how old am I now? Yeah, it's been like 8 years since like the final cutout happened.
The thing that strikes me about the way that the whole situation unfolded is that it almost feels a little bit like waking up after divorce or just ending any really negative romantic relationship. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
situations where, right, everybody knows they're right to leave because it's not working. But then
Mm-hmm.
afterwards, you will see that friend waking up to the pattern that she didn't
Yeah.
see was going on around her, to the screwed up pH balance of the water she was swimming in. Even though she knew she had to leave, she actually didn't totally process the situation. The way you describe waking up to the depths of the manipulation and unhealth of your childhood sounds a bit like that, which makes me want to hug you. But also, when you're describing what happened, what I'm thinking is you kept the peace your entire childhood, partially for survival, but part of it is also something inside of you that may have said, if I speak up, she's never going to give me what I want. She's literally just going to walk away from me because that's what she did.
Mm-hmm.
You
I
brought it up.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Like that's the thing too. Like have had people who don't understand the situation be like, well, why didn't you say something when you were a kid? And the fact is, there were a couple times I can vividly remember where I had considered saying something, but to know that an adult would go to my mom, say, your daughter said this is happening, my mom then playing face and going, oh my, kids, whatever she would say, that would be so convincing, adult to adult. And then I'd have to deal with her back at home saying, why, you said this? And then, then I'm going to go through hell. So realistically, it was a lose lose. There was no escape. There just wasn't.
That's the problem with not having a trusted adult,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
right, like that's the argument for grandparents who are really involved. We give so much solitary power to the parents, and even parents who are whole and emotionally healthy don't get
Mm-hmm.
it right all the time. The
Mm-hmm.
more I think about it, the more I realize friends who I know are really good people and coming from a really good place are doing a lot of damage to
Yeah.
their kids. And you were dealing with a mom who was not healthy. Now, looking back on it, do you think you know if your mom had a diagnosis or should have had a diagnosis? Because it wasn't just the alcohol.
No, it definitely wasn't.
Mm,
So this is something I've talked a lot with my siblings about now, in
yeah.
hindsight. My mom has not been formally diagnosed, as to my knowledge at least, and I believe my mom has an array of cluster B personality traits. So that would be like narcissism, that would be histrionic, like these types of things. They all fit. Like when I think of my upbringing, that all makes sense.
Mhm.
Again, she's never been diagnosed, but people like this rarely do because they're not going to go check themselves in. They don't think anything's wrong with them. But do I believe she has a lot of mental health, you know, issues? Yes, absolutely.
I interviewed someone on the podcast like 6 months ago. His name is Craig Malkin. He wrote a book called Rethinking Narcissism.
Mm.
And he's a professor at Harvard. He's been studying narcissism for like 30 years, way before it was a catchphrase. And we know that there's a spectrum, right? Narcissistic personality disorder is here. But what one of the powerful things he told me was like growing up, there was no words for this when he was a
No.
child. And the reason he studied it is because his mother was a narcissist, right? In that particular podcast, I asked him, I was like, what was there anything you could have known about your mom that would have changed it, that would have changed anything for you? And he said
Mhm.
even having the label wouldn't have changed anything because as a child, all he wanted was for her to change. They just need somebody to validate that their instincts are correct. And this is what I wanted to get to kind of in the next step of our conversation is the legacy of that. You grew up in an abusive household where you had other siblings who were also all in survival mode. So you don't even have someone to really talk to about it and make sense of it. And now, 20 years later, 25 years later, you're trying to make sense of it. You've been open about your mom forcing you to put on a brave face from a very early age and like a fake face.
Mhm.
As a media personality now, you share a lot and I'm all for it, but you do it in a very upbeat but poised way. It's like you're processing. How much of the poise is really internal calm for you now versus a shield?
That's an interesting question. I do think it's been a part of my personality just because I grew up this way. So I don't even know if I've taken the time to reflect on that. So that's an interesting question.
We could do a
Um,
part two. You can
yeah,
marinate.
yeah. But if I like think about it right now, I'd say I couldn't have shared the way I share right now like 5 years ago. Because I think if somebody were to say something negative or get upset, because there've been a million fights on my on my post, which is hilarious. Just like one person comments their opinion, somebody else who relates to my story comments their opinion. It's like it's hilarious. Actually, I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. Like in a weird way, it's so validating because all my internal thoughts are now happening via like people online having their discussions on my posts.
How
Um,
weird.
it's so
Yeah.
weird. But yeah, I guess like to talk about shielding, now I really do just look at the source of like
Mm.
maybe negative comments and I think, okay, this must be somebody who just doesn't understand what I've been through and I'm so happy for them. Like I really am. Like to be to be able to come at this from that point of view must be such a amazing thing. So like genuinely like that's like great for you like if that's your commentary.
What a
Um
charitable way to look at it. That is such a
yeah.
charitable way to think about people. Because what I have realized now is like even members of my own extended family, sometimes they believe in me. They knew who I am as a person. They know I'm not lying, but they will really have trouble wrapping their head around what I tell them is happening. They
Mm.
kind of don't really believe it. And I've gotten to the conclusion you've gotten to where I'm kind of like, I'm so grateful that you can't process this is possible in the world. I'm so
Yeah.
happy for you. You get to
Yeah.
stay gentle that way. And also, this conversation is over. Okay.
100%. Yeah.
That kind of thing. Someone else was telling me that she had gone viral and blown up on social media, and the number of people that get into fights in her comments. And she said it's like, number one, someone's saying something negative about her. Then, number two, before she can defend herself, someone else
Yeah.
is in there defending her with the comment that she had in her own head as a defense.
Yeah.
And then those two people are fighting each other. So it's basically then two people who are never going to meet arguing about someone they're never going to meet and something they're never going to have an answer to. And oh
Yeah.
my God, we need no social media ever
Yeah,
because this
literally
is
that
insane.
that's something that really resonates with me because when I first like made I think the post that you saw that like, that you found, that
Yeah.
post scared me so
Um,
much. But again, I'm still really into my self help and all that. And I've been listening to Mel Robbins with like the let them theory and just like,
yeah.
she talks about just being brave and putting yourself out there. And I was like, you know what? Whatever people think, I'm going to let them. I'm just going to do this because I feel called to do it. Because if somebody sees it and it resonates with them, it's the exact message I needed maybe 10 years ago. If I could have seen my post from somebody else 10 years ago, that would have been so
It would have
great for
helped.
me.
Yeah.
Um, Oh, so when I got my first negative comment,
Mm.
somebody saying something that, made me want to defend myself, my husband actually was like, why are you going to defend yourself to them? He's like, you don't need to defend yourself to them, kind of a thing. And I was like, oh, I feel like I should really say this. And then, like what you described, the last person on your podcast said, somebody else went and defended me for me with the words I was going to say. So that whole thing you just discussed, literally, I have seen that play out as well. And it's just it's like oddly validating. Like, I honestly kind of almost want to give the people credit who are like fighting for you, because it is a good feeling. Like, I can't deny that. Like, seeing somebody be like, I have this person's back who you've never met, you're like,
Right.
thank you. That feels really good. But
So,
it's
like,
also,
for future reference, if I ever blow up on social media and someone starts attacking me and then someone's defending me, I think what you and I just decided is I'm going to DM the person who defends me and give them
yeah.
like a code for a free Starbucks coffee.
Honestly, that's a great
You
idea. Maybe
know?
I should do that. Yeah, because it's so
Be like,
nice.
you made my day, you get a coffee, is what
Yeah.
happens. And here's a
Yeah.
coffee, you know?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so it's so nice. But what's interesting too is a lot of the like negative comments I've found are people making up a fake account. Like, they won't come at you from their real account all the time. It's usually like, if you click on these profiles, it'll be like follows 20 people followed by one and zero posts. Like,
Yeah.
it'll be like
It's
somebody
a hate
saw your post.
account.
Yeah, they saw your post, they got, whatever feelings they got from it, they went and created a fake account, or maybe they already had a fake account, but like, they don't really come at you from themselves. So
Yeah.
it's almost like that makes it even easier to think, why am I going to internalize this? Why am I going to let somebody who has to come at me from a fake account ruin my day? Like, I almost
Yeah.
feel bad for them a second time, because now they also are living such a sad, miserable life. They have to make fake accounts so they can go troll people online. Like, that's
Yeah.
that's also
And
not
they have
great.
time to do that. How sad is
Yeah.
that? In a
And
way, I just made kind of a beautiful connection. The strength that it would take, not that it's not going to hurt you, not that you're bulletproof all of a sudden, but the strength that it would take to walk away from the person who made you. And it involves walking away from focusing on what they believe about you. If you
mhm.
can do that, you're bulletproof against anybody else. Who cares what anybody else says? If you can survive what your mom is saying in her own head, which you know is wrong, without
Mhm.
going back and defending yourself,
Yeah.
then you were kind of made for social media, right?
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And thanks for saying that. It's actually something I recently thought of last week too. I was like, wait, I have already lived through what I've lived through. I've already been like bullied and harmed by my own mother. Like, you think you are
Yeah.
gonna like be the one to break me down? Like,
Right.
no. Sorry.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you're not gonna, like, it's just not gonna happen.
There was that audio that people have been using where it's real audio of a man screaming, and you'll see a woman calmly folding her laundry or whatever,
I've seen
and you
that.
hear
Yeah.
this man screaming like a massive abuser, and you can hear in his voice he's like just about to probably try to hit her, and then they'll put the words on top that says like I went toe to toe with a man who yelled at me like this. You think you scare me?
I
You
love
know?
that. Yeah, I mean, I hate that they went through it, but I love that that's like what they took from it. Like, that's amazing.
And now I fold my laundry.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the effect of it in relationships because you're happily married now and with
Hmm.
someone who's an actual partner, it sounds like. And who's your actual family. And
Hmm.
not a lot of people marry someone who they're happy with, who is their actual partner, and who is their actual family. It's a bit of a
Hmm.
trifecta, right? So the two of you obviously built something together. But you talked about having been in a couple of abusive relationships. Is
Hmm.
there a through line from the way that your mom spoke with you and manipulated you into those relationships? And if so, when did it change? Was there a switch that flipped in your head?
It's such a good question. So yeah, I started dating my first boyfriend when I was 14. And it was really serious, really fast. I was in high school or young love, and my first relationship was very serious. very all encompassing,
Mm,
and very much like my relationship with my mom. It was all about, no matter how bad you hurt me, no matter what you do to me, I know the man you are, and I know who you really are, and I know that you really do love me. I know you love me. So you just keep yelling at me. You keep telling me that, I'm a psychopath. You keep telling me you hate me. You keep telling me all these things, but I know you actually love me. Like, it sounds so insane. But that, like, cuz like at my house, my mom was so terrible, but I had to know that she really did love me. That cuz that's the only way I could get through it all, was to
mm,
truly believe that despite how everything felt, she loved me. So it's like I had to convince myself I was loving without any evidence of the people in my household making me feel loved. I mean, that, barred my brothers. Like, there was no parent telling me how important I was, listening to my thoughts, my opinions, wanting to watch me grow, watch me prosper, watch me, like, even caring about who I am personality wise, anything like that. So I had to find what made me special for myself. I had to like be like a one woman marching band on it's like hard to, because you think someone couldn't love themselves if they let people treat them that way. But in a weird way, like the people who treated me bad, I just convinced myself that they actually loved me, and like it almost like let me just stay in bad situations, because no matter how much they hurt me, my response was, you actually love me. And I know that sounds so crazy,
it doesn't,
but
because you were a child. It doesn't. It
yeah,
sounds to me, with absolutely no clinical training of any kind, that what's the alternative? A child
yeah,
has two choices. You can believe your parent loves you, or can believe your parent doesn't love you. And it would be easier to believe your parent loves you, but is a monster who cannot show it. So
mm-hmm,
much easier. Like,
mm-hmm,
they're sick. Something's wrong with mommy. Something's wrong with daddy, that they can't show it, but I know they feel it. They have to.
exactly, yeah,
Versus they don't, because then the only logical conclusion for a child is, if everybody else is getting love just for being born, why am I not? The problem is me. And that's not an
mm-hmm,
acceptable conclusion, right? So you made the only healthy conclusion, in fact, which
yeah,
was, I believe you love me. And then
yeah,
if you spend, what, 14 years of your life telling yourself someone who is abusive loves you but can't show it, then obviously you get into a relationship in your prime for a guy who's going to just be total sack of garbage.
exactly. So I feel like that's like the easiest way to describe how I found myself in those relationships. And yeah, is there a through line? Absolutely. And
Mm,
so my first boyfriend, I was with him from 14 till 18.
mhm.
Then I dated another guy who actually died. So that was quite hard on me in
In college?
college.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. So he passed away. He had a lot of issues as well, but he was nice. He wasn't harmful to me. He was a nice person with a lot of his own inner demons. And
Mm.
from there, I met my second boyfriend who, again, classic, would love
Manipulate.
bomb me at first.
Yeah.
We fell hard and fast, had a great, maybe 2 months. Then he moved into my house, and then I have a very bad habit of trauma bonding, obviously from my childhood. So I'd say my two relationships were just trauma bonds. And with
Mm.
my second boyfriend, it was a trauma bond. He had a lot of his own issues. A bunch of things happened. He would like lock me out of the apartment if I was home a minute late.
Mm.
He would like deadbolt it so I physically couldn't get in. He'd
In
like
your own
punch
home.
holes in my own
Yeah.
home, like that I was paying rent for. He'd like punch holes in walls if like, one time I invited him to dinner at my sister's. He told me, "You're not the boss of me. You're not my mom." He punched a hole in the wall, broke two bones, and then expected me to caretake for him because it was my fault because I invited him to dinner. And so it's actually my fault that he punched a hole in the wall and that he has broken bones. There were just, that's just a couple examples. It was just a really toxic relationship. And I was now going to school in Vancouver, and I was working a job because my mom lost all the money we had. And I was working this serving job, and I was up late at night, and then I was trying to go to school the next day. And when I'd come home between work and school, he'd be there, like either locking me out, screaming at me. Like, it was just a really bad situation. And I was listening to Tony Robbins, as silly as this sounds, and he said, when the pain outweighs the pleasure, people make changes.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, yeah, I think the pain's outweighing the pleasure here. Um, And I thought, why don't I make changes when that, like, how come that's not, like, is there something wrong with me? Because you're saying people make changes when the pain outweighs the pleasure. But here I've been living my life where the pains outweighed the pleasure my whole life, but change hasn't felt like an option.
Yeah. Because
So
when you
I,
were a child, it was not. It makes perfect sense.
yeah,
There were no options. And then now you're sort of a mini adult. You're in college, but
yeah,
so it's hard to believe you're an adult at that point. Frankly, I think it's extremely powerful that even at 25, you were able to, even at 22, that you were able to give yourself permission to begin the process
mm-hmm.
of going no contact with your own mom because you're still just a mini adult at that time. And what
Yeah,
it takes to give yourself permission, I don't know if you've given yourself a pat on the back for that, but like you're still
thank
just a kid.
you. No.
And so recently out of the childhood thing where you have to do whatever you can to just survive,
I
you
think I
know?
felt like a very like full blown adult at those ages, but when now that I think about okay, that was what was interesting too is I'd have friends who were still very much like you know being taken care of by their parents, like
Right.
still still basically like high school, but 22, and I didn't
Yeah.
feel that way, so I did feel a lot older, but I do appreciate that. Thank you for saying that because I think that is something like that like need I did need to hear like that older
I'm so
version of me
glad.
definitely needed
Yeah.
to hear. But yeah,
I never understand how people are able to make those big emotional shifts so early, because it seems so scary to me. And
yeah,
because, like I said, I had a fairly healthy childhood, but like I've had all sorts of toxicity in my life since then. And it has been so hard for me, even coming from a place of knowing that I'm backed up,
yeah.
to be able to then stand up to situations and say, actually, you are deeply unpleasant. I'm not going to have a relationship with you. Even saying that in my 40s to people who aren't supportive is hard.
Mhm.
So you really should be impressed with yourself, just for
Well,
whatever it's worth from some random lady on a
thank you.
podcast.
No, no, I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I guess that was kind of like the light bulb moment was, and then I just started sleeping at my friend's house and not
Yeah.
going home. Then me and him broke up, and then yeah, I met my current husband, Jordan. Um,
Your husband.
my
Yes.
husband, my current husband, my husband Jordan, um, and I honestly had to force myself to remain in the relationship at first, as bad as it sounds, because he was so nice and he treated me in such a good way, and like I wanted to leave because I was like, this is boring,
Yeah.
like as bad as
You
that
hear
sounds.
that. You
Yeah,
hear that from people where they're so used to the high, low that they think that's what falling in love has to be. And then
hmm,
they meet someone who's just like a good dude who's like, hey, let's make out. Let's have some turkey burgers by the ocean. Let's take a
yeah.
nap. And then you're like, what?
Yeah, exactly. It was really, really hard for me to like understand that like somebody could just be nice and care and that we didn't need to have
Yeah.
volatile arguments. There didn't need to be like name calling and screaming, and I didn't have to always be in the hot seat having done something wrong when I didn't know what I did wrong, and it didn't
Yeah.
have to be that way. And yeah, and then
High alert.
high alert. And then because I early on into our relationship did break up with my mom and
Yeah.
didn't know my dad's family and stuff, like he was my family, like in my 20s, like he really was my family, and he introduced me to his family, so I'm very grateful to him for that.
What this makes me wonder is, how does your pattern with your mom in your childhood and her manipulative behavior affect your ability to trust other women?
Yeah, that's a thing I struggle with, if I'm being honest.
I wonder.
I mean, I'm really fortunate. I have a lot of very good girlfriends, and I have friends from my childhood that are still like my best friends, and I'm very lucky for that. Um, but when it comes to, uh, I did find myself in like some friendships even that mirrored my mom in my relationship, which I'm now I've been able to come to and see through and get on the
Mm.
other side of as well. Um, but I definitely see women. I'm not like the first person to just say just because a woman says something is the way it is doesn't mean like I don't think all women are always telling the truth about things, and I know that that's like a controversial hot take. But that is like that's something I don't agree with personally,
Yeah.
because I just saw my mom lie about so many things all my life. So I'm definitely more discerning with women than I
Mm.
think maybe a lot of other people are, if that makes sense.
Well, you
Yeah.
have reason for it. I mean, I wondered how that would lead through. So, a couple more questions for you. Um, what has surprised you the most about going no contact with your mom?
Definitely that I find out more about myself every day and like that I have more space. It's like I'm sure you've heard of how fish only grows big as its tank. My mom felt like a tank like this. Like I felt like I lived in her little tank and like I couldn't be the woman I want to be because I wasn't allowed to be. And so I'm surprised every day by the woman I'm becoming, by like this voice I'm finding, by the fact that like I'm just growing into this woman who's finding her voice and who has like the courage to speak up and who's less afraid and who can make decisions. I know my opinion on things now. I didn't know my opinion on things for years. I was like
Well, you
I
weren't raised to think about it, right?
no. So like that's been the most surprising part is like yeah, I feel like this tank I lived in has been like shattered and I'm like, "Oh my god, like there's a world out here. There's like a human
Wow.
being that I am that matters, that can speak up, that has voices and thoughts and opinions." And that's been the most surprising part.
I love that analogy. And I'm glad
Mhm.
you got out of the tank. Also, my hope for you is that you find those healing feminine relationships, right? Like, obviously, you have good friendships, but like, I hope you have a mother in law or a grandma in law or an aunt, or that you get to become a mom if you want to. And then you
Mm.
get to have that healing because there's a lot of different ways we can get the pieces of the relationships we didn't get fed in our lives, and life is long. Next question. Is there anything you wish you knew about your mom or why she made the choices that she made, and would it change anything?
Um, so I know my mom didn't have a good relationship with her own mom.
Mm,
And then I know that my mom's mom, so my I call her my baba because we're Ukrainian.
mhm.
She didn't have a good relationship with her mom. So something I do know is that it's been like a generational thing, like in my mom's side of the family. Um, I personally, just based on the way I'm trying to break the cycle and come out of the things that have happened to me, I don't think there's a single thing that could have happened in my mother's childhood that I think would be like a, okay, that's why she treated me so badly. Like, I don't subscribe to that, because I believe that that's just people again making excuses to find comfort in the world. Do you know how her
Mm.
childhood was? I don't really care
It
because
doesn't
my
make it
childhood
okay.
was it
Yeah.
doesn't make it okay.
Mhm.
So I don't think that I'd be curious because I'm a curious person. If there was a reason to know it that could enhance my life in any way, sure, I'd be curious. But would it
Mm.
make it better? Would it make me feel feel like it was justified? Like absolutely not.
I love that because it really does sound like you have moved into the next phase of your life,
Hmm.
and you're not looking or searching for her to participate in making it as good as it's going to be. Last question, because that's why I wanted to talk to you. You know, like I said, I liked your profile and the way that you present yourself because I think that it's brave to talk about, but also because you're processing in real time with a
Hmm.
lot of poise. And
Hmm.
I relate, those with a mother wound struggle with self love generally for the rest of their lives. What do
Hmm.
you think it is about you that made it so that you couldn't stop loving yourself
um.
despite her choices?
Yeah. I think. I think for a long time I didn't know I loved myself, if that makes sense. Like I kind of explained to you, like when I was a child, I was like just kind of convincing myself that like she loved me in order for me to feel loved.
Yeah,
Um, I think I was actually like putting myself in harm's way a lot in ways that like if I truly loved myself, I hopefully wouldn't do.
right.
Um, but I think seeing now that like I'm advocating for myself in the ways that I wish the adults had advocated for me when I was younger makes me really love myself now because like I'm loving myself how I wanted to be loved. Like I'm advocating for the child that nobody advocated for. And like to me, that's like my biggest way of loving myself. And like if I could get anybody who's overcoming any kind of toxic relationship and trying to get out the other side, like, yeah, I think self advocacy and like loving yourself that way is the best way to love ourselves and the scariest way. But
Yeah, but
it's
worth
like
it.
really worth it.